What is up, YouTube? It is your boy Chris back with another video here on Free Will Photos. Sorry for the delay in getting started today, but I had a very late night and I woke up a little later than I would have expected to. So I'm not going to waste your time because we've already lost a little bit of the time. Today we're going to be editing photos in ON1 for Christmas time. Now, there's going to be a good series of photos that we'll look at. We'll look at some gift opening. We'll talk about some ideas. This will be more of a, think of it as a mentorship session of how to capture the moment, but also capturing the memory, detail shots from wide shots to all that stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into the computer. And like always, if you are looking for a copy of ON1, check the description box below. So you probably recognize this image from the cover shot or the thumbnail shot. This is going to be the first image that we work on today. Now, I took this photo because what I like to do is tell the story, right? And this is obviously something Christmassy. Now, it's a very close, detailed image, and I still have more images to capture for the Christmas of 2021. But this image is of our Christmas tree, and will probably be a background image for the album that I'm going to make for our Christmas unwrapping and all that good stuff. So there's no rhyme or reason. I have not edited these photos. I messed around with a few of them, but what I'm going to do is look and see which color profile I want to use. Now, if you caught my curves video, you know that the histogram really does matter. And I'm probably going to create a version of this in black and white at some point. So I'm looking at the tonal value from left to right of the histogram, right? So this particular image, it covers a lot of information in the shadows, but then there's some information going all the way across into the highlights. So that means this is going to convert well into a black and white. That is a little bit of a tip for you, that if you're looking to convert an image to black and white, check the histogram and see if there's information going all the way across. If there is, then that means you're going to get a pretty decent black and white. Just so you can see what I'm talking about. When I take the saturation out, you see I have highlights, I have midtones, and then I have shadows and I have blacks, right? I have everything represented here across the gray scale, if you will, which is why you want to make sure that you have a good tonal range. Now, I'm going to go with ON1 Portrait for this particular image, and then I'm going to expose it a little bit because I do need it to be a little bit brighter. Now, I'm not so worried about the noise in this particular image because I'm going to print this. If this was going to stay in a digital world, I would probably care a little bit more. But since I'm going to print this, I'm not going to worry about that. We're going to open up the shadows, and what I'm doing is just getting my base canvas. I want this to be a little bit brighter of an image. Now I'm going to hold down my J key, and you can see I have some highlights blown out. I got some shadows that are clipped here. So I'm just going to pull up on my blacks a little bit, clear those out, and then pull back on my whites, and I need to pull back on my highlights. I really want to get those red spots taken care of, which means since I can't pull back, I don't want to pull back on my highlights way too much, and midtones aren't going to save it. So that means I'm going to have to pull back on my exposure, and let me see. Yeah, it looks like those areas are just gone. They're blown out. So I'm going to fix that with the curves, and that's fine. This is the part of photo editing when you realize like if you have a good photo or not, and I have to preserve the photo. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to brighten up the rest of the image and make sure I don't clip anywhere else. Doesn't look like I did. So we are good to go there. I'm going to add a little bit of structure because I do want the image to have some edginess to it, if you will. I don't know if that's a good terminology. Let's go ahead and pull this down. No, I don't know. Maybe by pulling down on the haze slider doesn't necessarily help with that color, with the lights in this area. So we're going to leave it like that. And then pull up on the vibrance just a little bit. Let's see. We'll make it a little bit more vibrant and maybe desaturate to get more of a muted color palette, because that's what I like. And then we can warm it up a little bit. Yeah, it's a little yellow for my taste, but that's okay because yellow photos are more warm photos. It actually makes it more of a like a comforting feel. So this image, like so, is ready for me to go into my filters. And the first filter that I'm going to put on is a color enhancer. And the only reason why I'm putting on the color enhancer is because I may want to adjust my white balance a little bit here. And I may even add that in selectively, but we'll see. So I'm going to click on green and I am going to pull this all the way up. And I'm going to push this a little bit more towards the aquas, and we'll even saturate it. Now, if any of you have been using color enhancers, then you probably already know that most of the color of green is made up in the yellow color range. So when I click on yellows and I move this over to greens, you see I get like some weird, crazy greens. So just keep that in mind whenever you're working with greens. But for this one, I do want them to be a little bit more green, and I'll saturate it. It's weird to be working in the yellow channel to manipulate. Oh, wow. Excuse me. I apologize. It's a little bit weird to be working in the yellow channel to manipulate the greens, but it is what it is. All right. So now that we have the color looking, and I'm doing subtle adjustments because this is just the way that I edit. I do subtle adjustments. Now I need to bring a little bit of detail, and we'll make some attention adjustments. I think I'm just going to use dynamic contrast, and yeah, that looks pretty good. I'll back it off a little bit because I don't need that much. Now with raw images, you definitely need something to help with making it not look so flat and dull. All right. Flat in the sharpness department. If you don't take care of that early on, or at least ever, I won't say early on, but if you don't take care of that, you will end up with a flat image. And we'll see what happens when we put a sun flare in there. Doesn't necessarily make sense, but you see how it just brings a little bit of character into the image. I'm going to fill this area over here on the left. So in order to do that, I'm just going to click flip the canvas, or I'm sorry, flip next to fit to canvas. And this is going to move the little sun flare from this corner of the image over to this corner. Now, I want it to match a little bit more and probably get rid of this super crazy hotspot. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull down on the saturation, and I'm going to pull down on the brightness just a little bit because we want to make this look like it's another one of these lights. And then I'm going to hit transform, and I am using the default one. And by pulling down on this and then maybe tucking it back into the corner, it just looks like it's another Christmas light now. And I will pull down on the brightness a little bit more. And that should be good. Let's turn it off and turn it back on. And maybe it is still just a little too bright, so we'll pull down on the amount. Yeah, there. Now it brings in like this little warmth to it. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is actually turn this bottom portion into a place where I can put some text because, like I said, this is going to be the cover album or the cover of the album, and I want to make sure that I have a location for some text to really pop on this image. Now, there are a ton of ways that you could do this. The way that I'm going to do it is just go to local once it comes up, and I'm going to go with paint with color, click over here, turn this to a black color, hit the M on my keyboard to get my masking bug, and I am going to go with linear top and click right about there. And then just drag this down, make the transition a little bit nicer, I guess you could say. And then all I'm going to do is lower the opacity until I get to a place where I'm like, okay, that's dark enough for a transition. Like, I still want to be able to see the image down here, but I want text to be able to pop up over here. So this is a really cool way if you have an image where you're like, yeah, you know what, I want to put text on this. Well, now you can do that. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add adjustment, and I am going to do the same thing. Click on the color, change it to black. And then this time I'm going to hit the masking bug, but I'm going to select the line masking tool. Now, if you're watching this and you have an older version of ON1, you're not going to have the line masking tool. You have to have ON1 version 2022. I think there actually are some older versions that have that, so I'd take that back. But if you are on one of the more recent versions, but just before 2022, then you're not going to have this tool. But what I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this with the tool, but I want to put a little box up here, and that's going to be my box for the year 2021, because that's just what I want to do. So I'm going to click here, hold down shift to make my lines a little bit more straight. I don't think that does anything. So I'm just going to come to about here, and then come over here, and now I can close this off. And what I want to do is click inside of the box. That's going to add my adjustment to the inside of the box. And then I'm going to feather this quite a bit. And now we can hit done because I now have my box up here. And all I'm going to do is lower the opacity of this particular box. And maybe I feathered it too much. So the nice thing about this particular adjustment is if you click the line mask tool, you can hover back over it, select it again, and I'm just going to take off the feather altogether. And then I will do this instead. I'm going to feather this myself from the mask of the item. So there you go. Now that is there. And I could clean that up, but I'm not going to take too much more time doing that. All right, so the last thing, because I forgot to do it, is I need to take care of my clippings that are going on here. And then we'll see if I can take care of that, because The good news is when this prints, this is just going to turn all to black. The problem is there is some detail down there, but I kind of want this to be black because this is going to be text down here for something. So I haven't fully decided what I'm going to put there, but I do have some text options that I plan to put on there. So we'll see how that works out. Now, hit add. We're going to click on curves adjustment layer. And all I'm going to do here is pull down. And if I hold the J key, you can see that now I took out the brightest whites from the image, and it takes care of some of those problem areas where it's just clipping like crazy. Curves adjustment tool, very, very powerful. And then I'm just going to pull up a little bit just to restore some of those blacks down there, the shadow area. Now, by me pulling up on that particular black point, I did add in, I took away some of the contrast from the image. So in order to add it back in, I'm going to hold down the J key. I'm going to click somewhere higher up in the shadow area. I'm just going to pull that back down. And this is going to bring back that perceived contrast relative to the adjustment that I made. And now the photo's a little too bright, so I got to come over here to my highlight. Or I'm sorry, a little too dark. Got to come over to my highlights, brighten it up a little bit. And then I'm also going to come to my midtones because I don't want the photo to be crazy dark or whatnot. And I think that's probably pretty good. So here's what we started with. Photo looked good coming straight out of the camera, which is very, very important. But then we went ahead and made this edit. And again, this is a intentional edit. In fact, I think this might be a little too large for the text that I plan on putting there. This is something that you would normally do inside of Photoshop, but obviously I'm not using Photoshop. So I'm just going to pull that down and maybe just make the transition a little less. So there, I think that's a little bit better. All right. And then this little box up here is for the year. And yeah, I have an idea of what I'm going to do. Still working through this idea, but good enough for that. So we're going to go ahead and hit done and move on to another image. Now, Christmas is obviously next weekend, so I do want to say Merry Christmas to everyone in case I forget to do it anytime throughout the stream. But let me know what your favorite tradition is for Christmas in the comments section below. All right. I definitely want to know. Now, I really enjoyed this photo. I have some work to do to it, right? There's like a green tint, and I guess we could take a look at it now. There's no reason why we can't take a look at it. There is a green tint to the image, and I guess that was just in the fast preview because it looks like it's kind of gone there. But if I wanted to remove that, which it looks like it already did by adding in the magenta, you would just come down here to your white balance and you would adjust your magenta. And I want this to be a more cool looking image, like the temperature. I think it looks cool already. And it's framed up pretty nice. It's on the PowerPoint here and PowerPoint there on the right side of the frame. These are the kind of shots, if you are into stock photography or any sort of graphic design photography, these are the kind of shots that they tell a story, but they also leave plenty of space for text. Now, I do have an idea of what I'm going to do with this image, which is why I shot it the way that it is. I have a little piece of text that I'm going to put here that really, this is going to be a second photo inside of the album. So I guess we can go ahead and edit this. Didn't plan to edit this on the stream, but we're here now. So I am definitely going for brighter images in this particular book or this album. That is my thought process. I need the photos to be bright because I want this to be a joyful memory. So ON1 portrait, it just naturally brightens a lot of these tones. So that's why you'll see me gravitate towards that a lot in this particular video or this live stream. So I'm going to open up the shadows just a little bit. I don't need to open them up a whole lot. Let's see what the midtones does for this image. No, I don't like what the midtones are doing because I still want it to be like an intimate shot where it's dark. But I do want it to be a little bit more lively, brightened up, and I think that's good. We'll throw some structure in here, and we will leave that alone. I don't need to over edit this image. I may mess with the greens because what I think is going to happen, I don't have this monitor calibrated, but in my experience of printing is that I always need to add a little bit more saturation to my greens. So I'm just going to throw in a little bit of vibrance and then click on the yellow channel because remember, yellow increases the greens, and I'm going to move the hue over just a touch, and then I'm going to saturate them. Now, this is a micro adjustment. It's not something that needs a whole lot. I just want them to be a little bit more green. So when it prints well. And then I'll even brighten them up a little bit, right? We'll go with some brighter greens. And I'll come to the green channel and be deliberate with brightening just the greens. Color adjustments are awesome. They work to do things just like this. So now that I have that photo good to go, I'm going to go ahead and give it the stamp of approval, which 3 stars and a heart for me just means that I'm done with the edit. I like the edit, and it needs to be printed or exported so it can be printed. What I'm going to do with it. But like I said, I know what I'm doing because I'm making an album of Christmas photos. So those are all of the detailed shots, and I'll show you I didn't take too many of our tree just yet, but these 2 images I think are going to work for what I need them to do. Now, the next thing, we're going to come over here to family pictures because the photos that are going to go into this album are actually going to be Christmas photos from this year. But the photos that I'm going to show you are Christmas photos from last year. All right. That's just the way it is. Obviously, Christmas hasn't happened this year, so I don't have photos. But I keep like this. I need to go through and reorganize some of my images. So I'm going to do that. But I keep all of my Christmas photos essentially with my family pictures. They're all labeled as such inside of a folder. I used to make albums in Lightroom, but when I switched to ON1, it just made more sense to keep them in folders. So that's what I do. Now, as you can see, I do all kinds of stuff with my Christmas photos. This is a memory, right? This is something where my daughter gave my wife something, and yes, these photos are going to be of them in their pajamas. You're going to see how my family on Christmas morning, we wake up and we embrace each other. We are believers in Christ, so we pray. We acknowledge that it's the birth of Christ, or the day that we celebrate the birth of Christ, and then we go into opening gifts. But there isn't much done. I think my wife did put on some makeup here, but obviously with the lip gloss, and it looks like she has some foundation and concealer. But moral of the story, these are those genuine raw photos where you get to see your family And it's all about capturing emotion. All right. It's all about capturing emotion and capturing the moment. So that photo was already edited. Many of these are going to be edited because I did this already last year. So what we'll end up doing is creating versions and then editing those. So that way you could see what I'm talking about. As you can see, these images, they were really dark, mostly because I was getting my exposure incorrect. So make sure that you are getting your exposure correct. These ones were shot at 100, 2.8. And then I think I just bumped my ISO because I wanted to stay at 100. Didn't want to lower the shutter speed, and for the lens I was using, my aperture was open as much as it could be. So obviously I had to bump the ISO in order to get that exposure. Now we'll start with this image. I apologize for clearing my throat. And Tony, what is up, my man? Yeah, you're right. These photos are memories. Let me see. We'll go ahead and put that up there. And Tony said these photos are memories. You are absolutely correct, my friend. These are memories, and I love them. I love them a lot, which is why I make albums every year. Now, I forgot to create the version. Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Never mind. This photo was not edited. A preset was applied that whenever I use my Canon R6, I used to have a preset that I told ON1 every time an R6 photo was uploaded, add this preset. I was going to make a video about that, but I realized I did not like that feature because it did not produce what I wanted. Now, this particular image is a JPEG. Now, based off of how you have JPEG set up in your camera, you will get a different look every single time. However, I recommend that you shoot in RAW and JPEG for these shots, because what I have found is I got fatigued doing a lot of, because you tend to overshoot in these types of situations. My recommendation is that if your camera supports it, put it on RAW and JPEG, photograph that way. So when you get into the computer, if you come across an image that looks good enough in JPEG, then move on to the next, because you will get fatigued, you will overshoot because there's always something going on. And my next tip is shoot through the action to capture the emotion. All right. This is a image. Sorry. This is an image that I did not shoot all, or this one doesn't capture the emotion, right? There's a little smirk and, happy grin on her face. And this was a gift that my wife made. My daughter loves a game called Animal Crossing. Shout out in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about. And so she wanted to give her kind of a, what is the word? Like a replica, or she wanted to give her a item that comes out of the game. There's these little gifts. So she made this, crafted, made all this stuff. I think she actually cut this out on some vinyl from her Cricut. So moral of the story, that's beside the point, right? Shoot through the emotion, because you'll remember these things. And in the book that I made, I put, Animal Crossing gift and whatnot, because as we get older, you may forget. And then it's like, well, why did she get this? And then that brings back the memory. So with JPEGs, the beauty of them is you can really stay right here inside of the develop module and make a great image. Let me show you. So what we're going to do is leave the blacks right where they are, because I think that there is plenty enough light and detail in the blacks. And even in the whites, I don't have too many issues. What I may want to do is just boost the exposure because, again, for holiday books, Christmas books specifically, I really, really enjoy having those photos brighter because when you print, fun fact, whenever you print an image, you will see that the photo is darker. So I recommend that you put maybe a third of exposure into your images. So when it comes off of the backlit screen and out onto your paper, the photo is as bright as you expected it to be. Now, if you have a calibrated monitor, you may not have this issue, but if you don't have a calibrated monitor or even know what I'm talking about, then it's important to just put a little bit of exposure in there. That's all I'm saying. All right. So that way, when it prints as bright as you would expect it to. It's going to look a little brighter to you, but before you print it. Now, when it comes to color, I tend to be okay with the JPEGs that come out of the Canon because I do have a profile set up on the Canon that I have been manipulating for a little while. So you don't have to worry about that as much, but you can mess around with vibrance and even with saturation. But this particular image, I think the saturation was fine where it was. It can stand to have a little bit more vibrance, but I'm also okay with the muted look. So don't have to do much to this image. And this is what I'm talking about with shooting raw in JPEG to save you from the edit fatigue. Now, if there is one thing that I would do with this image is maybe mess around to see what a glow would look like on it. And, you know, that's just to give a little bit of that memory, but not really feeling that. The other things that you could try out are antique, LUT, like anything that just changes the overall profile just a little bit. Again, warm photo. And then maybe I'll come up here and we will pull this away. Oh, sorry. Need to click on the settings icon and then you can pull it away from different tones like skin, maybe a little bit from the shadows. And now I can pull this up a little bit more and it just blends in with the image a little bit better. So this is with the antique filter. This is with it off, with it on. And this could be a look that works for you. So I'm giving you options and ideas. Take it for what it's worth. Use it for what you think you would find value in being able to use it for. And, you know, mess around with it. Like the cool thing about ON1 is you can literally just play around with stuff and see what happens. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then it just doesn't. There's no problem with that. What I will warn you about is in areas like where there's a darker area transitioning or lighter area transitioning into a darker area, when you add in some of these settings, you just got to pay attention to what is going on in those areas, because when you print it, it's probably not going to come out the way that you expect it to. So, you know, take note of what you're actually editing in the photo and how those transitions are working. Turn things off and on. As you can see, this particular preset, it really brightens up the image, which is great. I like that. But maybe you want to pull it down just a little bit, and you see how that transitions a little bit more natural. Again, food for thought, something that you can think about. One of the last things that you can do in an image like this is you can put the vintage. Yeah, I'm with you, Antony. I like the original as well. My goal is to just show different ways that you can edit the image, so that way you can get, you know, the look that you're going for. if you're going for a look, or if you have no idea of what look you want to go with, you know which filters may be your go-tos to help you get ready to make an image with a little bit more of a style to it, if you're looking to put a style in it. Now, with the vintage, I like to just pull down the amount and, mess around with the saturation, which technically they're the only two options that you have available. But I like to mess around with this. Yeah, thank you for that. Now, the next thing, if you want to add, the cool thing is you could do all kinds of stuff. You could throw film grain in there. You could throw film grain in there. Not gonna lie, right? I don't really throw film grain in there unless it's a black and white. That's a personal opinion. But that is the vintage. And then of course you also have the LUT. Like, there are a ton of options, right? I can go with one of those, click here, come back to my settings, and move this out of the shadowed areas, move it a little bit out of the highlighted areas, maybe even preserve the skin tones a little bit more. And now I have a different style. Now, this is a very subtle approach, right? If you know anything about the way that I edit, subtlety is the way that I go in most of my photos. All right. Now, one of the other things that you can do is obviously you can come up to layer. Click on filters, and then if you have plugins, again, this is a 2022 exclusive option. So if you have ON1 Photo Raw 2022, then you can use third-party plugins in order to make a new layer, blend that with the old one. And for fun, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to turn off that LUT because I don't want my LUT to be incorporated. And we'll just go to Analog Effects Pro 2. And we'll mess around with this and see what happens. Because I haven't done a good walkthrough with, my creative style. Not that mine is the end all be all, because it is absolutely not, by the way. It's just the way that I like to edit. All right. Hopefully, you guys know how you like to edit. So we'll make that a little bit larger. And right off the bat, I am not a fan of this particular thing or this preset. So what I'm going to do is come over here, and we are going to choose, let's go with a color cast. And let's see what color cast has. Like, this is that dated, I don't know about you, but there's like a nostalgia of opening a photo album from years past and then seeing how the color has shifted from the original print. Let me know in the comment section if you've ever done that. I appreciate that, because it just lets me know that, one, this is a real thing. Obviously it is, because photos are, but it's also one of those things. I don't know why this is, what's going on. Now, of course, my computer doesn't want to let me click through presets. Am I missing something? Yeah, and Tony has those kinds of photos. Yeah, and I appreciate those photos. I really do. I don't know what's going on with my computer, though. Very, very annoying. I may have to restart ON1. For whatever reason, things just don't work the way that you expect them to, and I don't know. All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to restart ON1, or actually, let me come here. Nope, there, and we'll go to force quit. And yeah, it doesn't even look like it's running the other image. So let's just go ahead and hit force quit. We'll come back over here. We'll get back into ON1, and I'm not going to worry about using a third-party app today because it's no fun watching things just turn off, you know. Yeah, so I don't know if that problem is like, because sometimes it works, other times it doesn't, and it's annoying because you want to edit your images so that way, you know, you can just keep moving. And when it freezes on you like that, and it doesn't even tell you what it's trying to do or think about doing, it just stops. So hopefully in the new update that comes out on Monday, it'll work out. You use Topaz. Yeah, I don't have any of those plugins. Maybe someday I'll get some Topaz plugins. So here is a prime example. Now these photos, they're in a backward sequence. Let me see if I can make this a little bit larger. They're in a backward sequence, right? So the photos, this one started first, and this was her receiving the gift. All right. The balloon is cut out. One of the things that I have learned, and I think the balloon actually fell off. That's what happened. But one thing that I've learned is you're never going to get the perfect photo unless you just start taking photos. And the memory is what matters the most. So you don't have to be some expert photographer. Whenever you're capturing the moment, capturing family, my wife and my kids, they love these photos because it just captures them. All right. So she gets the gift. She's smiling. That's her receiving it. And then I think I probably told her, hey, pick up the balloon. And I just shot her picking up the balloon. My daughter loves to give crazy faces. So that is not how she genuinely smiles. It's just one of those things. I was directing her here because when you're the photographer, sometimes you have to give direction. Otherwise, you end up with some other things. Now, this particular image, she's pulling this item out of the box, and you know, the emotion is what I'm looking for. Then I guess she had an itch, so got that. And you know, you shoot all the way through. This is where I think the emotion stops. They don't look as a photographer. Oh, yeah. You're talking about like when you try to take photos of the kids, or yeah, that is the struggle of my life. I get great photos of my kids. They're the reason I picked up a camera in the first place. But they know that I'm just going to take photos of them. Now, as you can see, we use the exact same ornaments as we do in previous years. So here I am. There's a detail shot from the previous year. All right. Let's make these a little bit smaller. Okay. Let's find an image so we can get back to the editing. She is sharing the gift with her. And this is like reliving the Christmas morning. Now, here's photos of my wife. Now, this is actually one of my favorite photos. And it's because, like, photos, they're instant recalls of the people that you spend your life with, right? My wife, obviously I spend my life with her, but I ran out of regular tape. But what I have an abundance of is something called gaffer's tape. I'm a musician. Anyway, gaffer's tape, we use it on stage to tape our cables to the floor, and it blends in well enough that people won't notice it. It doesn't have it's non-reflective and all that good stuff, right? Well, I had to we also ran out of wrapping paper, so I'm taking scraps of the wrapping paper and I'm literally just taping them around the edges of the box. And this is the back of it because I do have some class, right? So I put this up against the wall, and when my wife pulls it out, she just starts laughing because she sees the ghetto taping that I've done to wrap her gift. And I'm like, look, I bought you this gift. I couldn't wrap it. I had to get it to you. And, this is the reason why you make albums, because that story could have been forgotten had I not had this photo to tell you, or to remind me so I could tell you, because it wasn't one of those things where you're just going to remember all the time. But this photo here, I think this is the JPEG. Yeah. All right. This is the original photo. Really quick edit on this. We're going to brighten it because, like I said, you want to brighten the image. And then the next thing is on this one, I think I can probably pull down on the blacks. Thanks, Antony. Yeah, I'm a regular person, right? We're all people. And sometimes I feel like there are content creators that they try to put on this front like they're not a regular person and that they're greater than they could be or than they actually are. And I hope I never come across that way. I do stuff just like this because, yeah. And this is the reason why I like photography, because it just allows me to express myself the way that I want to. But I'm not even talking through this edit. Sorry. This is how I do, right? So what I'm looking at is I just want to create a richness in the image. To me, as is, it's a little too flat. I brightened it up. I threw in some contrast to separate the tonal range. If I go ahead and reset that, you see how the blacks, they kind of just scoot it back over. We'll pull this back out, and now I have my tonal range. Thanks, Antony. I appreciate that. So now that we have the tonal range there, and then I'll probably mess around with the haze just a little bit. I always, the haze slider seems to be used primarily for landscapes, but in portraits, sometimes, like in this particular image, there could be some use. Now, obviously, I'm on a JPEG, so no sense in really messing with the temperature sliders here. You can get away with a little bit of an adjustment. As you can see here, I can brighten it up, or I'm sorry, warm it up. But that's where I would leave it in the develop module. This one, I would probably use a antique filter and then just pull down on the brightness, or I'm sorry, leave the brightness or pull it up and then pull down on the opacity, and then change the blending of it from the shadows to the highlights, and maybe even on the skin. Do a before and after. That looks good. Now, obviously, you can choose all different profiles here. This one actually looks the best to me, Cairo. But in the event that something else looks good, I like Marcellini, that's what that is, or Marcelli. Yeah, it is subtle, and this is my approach. I love subtle photos. I love subtle options, right? That's just the way that I do. I could even get away with Paris. So we'll leave it on Paris. Oh, you're talking about the dehaze. Yeah. That too. Um, I mean, I like everything to be subtle. So pulling down opacity and then turning the effect off and on. And what I do, this is just the way that I view photos. I always look at the image in thirds. Okay, so the top third, and it's probably easier to turn on. Hopefully, this line here comes through. Now, whenever I look at an image and I'm doing my edits and I'm turning things off and on, you'll often see me click it 2 to 3 times. The reason for that is the first click, I'm looking up here. Excuse me. I'm looking at the top third of the photo. The reason I want to look at the top third of the photo is I want to make sure that like it's a smaller segment of the photo so I can see what's happening there better, right? So it's off. I turn it back on. I see her skin tone changes. I see the red in her hair, and then I look back at the reds in her hair, and it also opens up a little bit of the shadows there. So that's what I do there, and then I move down to the middle third. I do the same thing. And what I'm looking for is what's actually changing in the image, and if I need to paint something away, right? So maybe I don't like the way that it's working in her hair. I'll go ahead and increase my brush a little bit, and I'll bring down my opacity to something really low, like 13. Yeah, just really crazy low. And I'll make a pass, and then I'll leave it. And then if it's something like this is if I find that I need to work on something, right? So if I hit O, you could barely see that there's even something removed. The reason I do it this way, using opacity instead of flow, is I can't add more than one click would allow. And this is like if I'm really trying to be super subtle. Now, obviously, I can make this opacity much higher and make the edits, but if I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm not adding that or removing too much because I still want the effect there. I just don't want as much of it. So like maybe on this gift, maybe there's too much going on with the red and in the shift because it's taken away from the sheen. So maybe I'll add a little bit more of that in, right? So no matter how many times I go over this, as long as it's still in the same click, I'm going to be able to clean up that entire area. So now it's like, well, no, that's not enough. I can click on here even more and continue with working on the gift. And this builds dimension into the image and interest, right? As the photographer and photo editor, if you will, it is our responsibility to guide the viewer's eye. So, what a lot of people do is because we know that our eyes go to the brightest thing, this is why you see me throw vignettes all over my images. I'll put a vignette there, and it's like, okay, well, the photographer's telling me that I need to look up here. Now, I like the entire scene here, so I would not put a vignette on this image. I would leave it as so. I would probably put, instead of a vignette, I would go linear top and then just pull this down to here, turn it back on, and that's how I would probably edit this photo, right? Just because there's nothing really going on down here, but in the composition, it's nice to have negative space, and the negative space really just helps keep the focus and attention going into the expression right here, and this really silly gift looking thing. So pay attention to that type of stuff when you are composing your images. It's important to note. All right. I know I'm a little all over the place, but if you guys bear with me, we will get through this. So I'm going to hit done. And we'll take a look at one more image. Now, one thing that you have to remember is tight, medium, wide. No matter what you're photographing, you should always go tight, medium, or wide. What am I talking about? Well, tight, medium, and wide is in reference to your zoom. So if you're photographing a landscape, photograph the entire landscape and then hone in on a specific section of the landscape, and then go into like micro details. All right. So the first shot, that's your wide shot. That's the entire landscape. The second shot is going to be your medium shot. That's like the closer version, closer portion of the landscape. And then those detail shots, those are what's going to make the difference. Now, I didn't move around too much, so because I was using a zoom lens compared to what I would normally use, or instead of a prime lens, I was using a zoom lens 24-70. So it allowed me to get close, which this is as close as I need to get because I want to get this information. I would consider this to be more of a medium shot. All right. And then this shot here is a little bit wider. Obviously, it's at 36 millimeters. This one here is at 46. 10 millimeter difference, but you can visibly see the difference in the photo. And it does make a difference in the way that you edit. Now, there's all kinds of stuff. I got our glue gun. Trying to find some more. We got our daughter a computer. That's her opening that. So here's a tighter shot, right? This one is shot at 53. And this one is shot at 64. I was further away from her. She was sitting like right next to me. So that's why she looks a lot larger in the frame. The goal is to make your subjects large in the frame, so your edit process works that much more smooth. And then here's a wider shot at 24 millimeters. This gets the entire atmosphere. We can see that, they're in a room, and these two shots look drastically different than one another, which is the goal and the point of what I'm trying to make here when it comes to these types of photos, right? You got the wide shot. You can see a Nintendo Switch. We had a cable box, all this stuff. You could see it all here. Then we had the tighter shot where my daughter's larger in the frame. You can see my younger daughter is looking at her. We know what she's looking at, but this shot, it tells a little bit more of the intimate emotion. And this is what helps with your storytelling capabilities. So, and it will influence your edits. I promise. All right. It influences my edits pretty much all the time. So tight, medium, and wide, and just photograph what you have in front of you. Don't try and make a scene. Don't try and make a moment. Just photograph what you have in front of you. All right. Now, this one, I probably said something stupid. And so my wife, this is, if I remember correctly, it was a little bit of a delayed response for me to go and take the photo. I said something stupid. She laughed, and I was like, oh, that would be a great photo. And I turned around, and I caught the tail end of the expression and not the beginning of it. So that's something that, you're just going to deal with. But tight, medium, and wide whenever you are getting photos, because it will determine the way that you edit. And This one is shot at 48 millimeters. I wanted the kids to fill the frame, but I also wanted to show the chaos of all of the wrapping paper of the gifts that they opened on the floor. This just says Christmas morning. They don't have to be looking at me. She's looking at her sewing kit that she received, and then the intimate emotion. Yeah, I love the intimate, or I love to build intimacy in my family photos for sure. When I do client work, I like to build intimacy in those photos as well. But sometimes you get what you get, right? So here is another example. And, this is, I guess, getting a little bit away from the editing side, but I don't talk too much about the capturing. And I think capturing the moment is what really matters. So find unique and creative ways to tell the story in your own eyes. And look at the expression on my daughter's face here. I can't zoom in any further than that in the preview, but she opens up this sewing kit because she didn't know what it was. And so she made a sound, and it made my daughter look over to see, like, oh, what's going on there? And, to me, I like this as a much more wide image. Now, you could zoom in and make this 5x4 of, this expression right here, but having the top of the tree, showing our photo wall in the house of our family, showing one of our other books that I've printed. This is from a vacation that we took. And, to me, this tells the story a lot more. I appreciate that, Antoni. Thank you. And hopefully, this is resonating with everyone. If you celebrate Christmas, and really, even this goes beyond Christmas at this point, the tight, medium, wide concept, and what you include in your image, being intentional, putting stuff in the frame. I got on the floor, or I moved the camera down. I did not get on the floor. But I moved the camera down closer to the floor so that way I can capture this in the foreground and get my subject, or my daughter, in the background, and showing kind of the time frame that there's still opening gifts like this gift here. And the way that we do Christmas gifts in our household is each kid gets a wrapping paper. So my youngest daughter got this wrapping paper. My oldest daughter got the little snowflakes. So that way we don't have to tell them, oh, that's for you. We just tell them, this is your wrapping paper, and they know. And we make it distinctive enough that there's no discrepancy of when or whose is whose. That's our goal. And just going through here, I guess now I'm just sharing the album because I'm not even editing photos, but still worthwhile. The concept of knowing what you're getting, photographing emotion, as you can see, is what's going to draw you into wanting to edit the photo. So just be ready, take photos. You will get some photos that don't have much emotion. And I don't use high speed continuous. All right. That's the other, I guess we can jump out of here. So I don't use high speed continuous whenever I photograph my images for these type of events. What I use instead is single shot and servo mode, or continuous servo. That allows me to stay in focus, but I can anticipate when the action is going to happen. And my shutter speed is fast enough, 1/100th of a second, that I know that I can go click, click. So I'm the one that's kind of directing how many images I take, because sometimes, remember I said that you can end up overshooting in these circumstances. Well, one of the fastest ways to overshoot is to put your camera on high speed, or I'm sorry, not high speed, continuous, changing your drive mode to just rifle through images as you hold down the shutter button. You can end up with 20 images of the same event, and it doesn't allow you to really, it just fatigues you. You look at it, you're like, oh man, I got 700 photos of this one event. This doesn't make sense. And then you look at it and you realize, like, well, there's only 50 different frames, but I have 700 images because I took all of these images of one scene, and I was just shutter pressing and spraying and praying. Anticipate as much as you possibly can what's going on with the situation, and shoot through the emotion. All right, I have to give that note. You want to shoot through the emotion. Make sure that when you photograph it, they open the gift, stay focused on them, but wait for the final emotion, because you're going to get the initial emotion when they see it. They're like, oh, that's a great emotion. But then there's the mental process of, oh, I wanted this. And then that's another emotion. And then there's the ending of that emotion, and everyone ends a little bit differently. Sometimes one year we wrapped a really big box. It was completely empty. I didn't take a picture of this. I just remember it. But we wrapped a really, really, really big box. It was completely empty. And my daughter at the time was much younger, obviously, and she was excited because she's like, oh, what's in this big box? What's in this big box? And she opens this box and she looks at it. She's like, you got me. And she couldn't read, so she didn't know what it was. And she was just so excited. So she opens it up and realizes there's nothing in it. And then she looks over at my wife and I, and then she takes the box and she tips it over and just climbs inside of it. And she had a blast with the box. So the joke was, we got our daughter a box for Christmas. Now, we got her the empty box because, not because that was her gift. We got it because we thought it would just be fun to see what she would do with an empty box, and she did not disappoint. Moral of the story is, you want to shoot through the emotion and the gestures and the experience, and you may have to move around. Now, being present in the moment is another thing. As you can see, I use a zoom lens. Sometimes I use a 35 and just keep it really simple. But if I can, and so I don't have to move around as much, I use a zoom lens instead. My 24-70, you don't need a big lens unless you got a huge family room where you're doing all this. But the goal is, you take a 24-70. I mean, you can even get away with an 18-55. You've seen that most of my images were under 53 millimeters. So an 18-55 will give you a good variety of shots, tight, medium, and wide, with you sitting in one area. Let me grab a sip of coffee. So you take those shots and then you just go for it. You talk to your family, you embrace with them, and you just enjoy the moment with them. But most importantly, you don't have to take 1,000 photos. This particular library of images is 723 images, but that was because I shot raw in JPEG. So if you have that, it was really only 320 images, 310. I think that's what it comes down. I don't know. Bad math. Now I got to figure it out. 360. 360 plus 360 makes 720. And then there's 3 extra photos in there, or maybe it was 361 and 361. I don't know. Moral of the story is I did not take a ton of photos. I took enough photos to capture tight, medium, wide of the entire event for my family. But at the same time, I took enough, or as little photos as I could to keep from having to edit. And a lot of the images that I used for the final catalog were actually JPEGs unedited. That, like, just think about that. You don't have to shoot 100% in RAW, which, brings me to a video that I'm working on. There was a questionnaire that I put up a little while ago, and it said, which one do you shoot in, RAW or JPEG? And overwhelmingly, the response is RAW. Now, I am not opposed to RAW or JPEG. You shoot whatever you feel the most comfortable in. But what I want to show you is sometimes the JPEG straight out of the camera is good enough. And I know that there are plenty of photographers that they spend so much time getting it right in camera that when they produce the JPEG, they don't want to go through editing. So they just send a JPEG as a deliverable. There's a guy that I watched on YouTube that he does this for wedding photos. He doesn't edit the wedding photos. Whatever comes out of the camera is what he delivers. And he charges like $8,000 to $10,000 to photograph weddings. So he's not like some run-of-the-mill, cheap photographer. He's a dude that's charging top dollar for these weddings, and he's only shooting in JPEG and not even editing photos. So I mean, he doesn't spend time in the Lightroom or anywhere else. Yeah. So, and Tony says all of his photos, go ahead and put that up there, family pictures are always in JPEG. And I could dig it. I shoot mostly in RAW only. I'm not going to lie. I shoot mostly in RAW. However, in situations where I want to be present in the moment, I know that I'm going to make some sort of print copy. I just shoot in JPEG and RAW. So that way, if the RAW version is going to take a whole lot of editing, but the JPEG looks good enough, I roll with good enough. Now, some of you are probably going to be like, well, why would you roll with just good enough? Because the truth is, unless you're entering a photo competition, and I found this to be true with my clients, unless you are entering a photo competition, the emotion and the event that you capture is more valuable than the quality of the image. All right. Because I have shot some images at high ISOs and they look grainy on the computer, and then when you print it, they're not as bad. In fact, sometimes the grain isn't even noticeable, or it adds a charm to the image, especially in black and white images. I love it. And the family that I deliver these images to, or the client that I deliver the images to, they look at it and they're just like, whoa, wow, that's amazing. And it's not that great, to be honest, right? It's not photo competition worthy already. And I find that out sometimes with just testing my photos with the guru shots, which I made a video on earlier this week. So if you haven't caught that, go check that video out. When the live stream is over, I'll probably just throw a link in the description there. And Tony says, when you know your camera, you can do that. Yeah. When you know your camera, you can shoot JPEGs, and then they don't look as, yeah, that's right. So, and Tony's now, and Tony has been a photographer for many, many years. This guy has some amazing work, so he understands. But if you are new to photography or just starting out or intermediate and you think that you have to make these masterpieces, I'm not trying to stop you from doing that, right? I think that photography is a way for you to express yourself and to make the art that you want. That's the whole purpose why I teach how to use photo editing software, so you can do exactly that. But when it comes to Christmas family photos, the memory of the event the morning of is going to be far greater than the perfect edited photo in ON1 Photo Raw or Lightroom or whatever software you're using. Don't get too wrapped up in I have to spend this much time editing a photo, like, because you don't. You truly don't. My family loves these photos. In fact, I made a podcast a while ago talking about the importance of printing a photo and just doing a reaction. And I printed some photos for Christmas as a gift to my wife that I'm still working on. But the gift overall, she knows that I have the photos, and I was showing the kids some other photos because my wife asked me to print her some so she can decorate the house with some Christmas photos from this year and years before. Well, she knows that I have these other photos, and she's like, I want to see those. And I'm like, well, no, you can't, because it's a part of your gift. You'll see them when you unwrap your gift that I'm making for you. Yes, I still make gifts, right? Don't leave making gifts to just kids. But anyway, I digress. So she's telling me, she's like, well, no, I want to see those, because she was on such a memory lane high that when she knew that I had more photos, she was like, I want to see those other photos that you have, because I really, really like them. And she was trying to grab the box from me, and it was interesting. But the reason I share that is printing photos is the final state of a image, or of an image. Now, I know that digital photography, we have way more photos that we keep on our computer than we ever print, and that's perfectly fine. But when you print a photo, it becomes something so much more. It's like a painter, right? A painter can see the vision of the final product in his or her mind, but until it goes onto the canvas and it's completed, is it truly a work of art? The same concept happens with our photography. We take photos, we put them into a photo editing application, and then we go through the editing process. But if we don't print it, now, sometimes, digital sharing is a thing, but printing is the final stage of an image. Now, I have some prints, and I plan to put prints all over the walls in my office here to just remind me of that, because I've gotten away from printing some of just my personal work. I make albums for the family and books and things of that sort, but I need to get back into printing and printing some of the photo edits, like works of art, things of that sort. And Tony says he totally agrees. Printing is the last stage, and yeah, it really is. Printing is the final stage of your photography, because back in the day on film cameras. Now, I only shot a few rolls of film, and I never had to develop film in the darkroom. Not for photography, at least. I developed like film. I don't know what they're called. a type of film for print shop whenever we wanted to print something, which I felt was just, anyway, I won't even get into that. But the film that I dropped off at Rite Aid or Walgreens or CVS, whatever it was, with my disposable cameras, you would get the roll of film back in the little canister when you got your prints back. And, someone, I guess they probably went through a digital processing at that point because it was like 1 hour photo. But either way, something went through the process of taking your film and converting that into a final image that you can then go and share with your friends, because back in the day, there wasn't a way of texting images, right? You had to take the photos, take it to a place, get them developed, and then you would be able to share the photos, and you would get multiple copies. Now, if you wanted to go back and print more photos, you had to take that roll of film with you, and hopefully you knew which photos you wanted, so that way you could tell them, I want photo number 1 and photo number 12, because depending on what type of camera you had, you may have only had 24 exposures, and you did not get all 24 of those exposures of the subject that you wanted, and they were all just a little blurry, so sharpness wasn't as important back then. There's just so many things that getting a final print will show you that photography is about more than the digital space of editing and all that, even though I really enjoy the digital space and of editing. And Tony says, I make every yearbook of my best photos. Oh, so that's not a bad idea, right? Making a yearbook of your best photos is always a great idea, because you get to instantly see your progression either through the year or from year 1 to year 15, right? I look at some of my older photos, and maybe that's something that we'll do here on the channel, where I pull up some older photos, and we have some photographers submit their older images. Yeah, maybe that'll work. And we just kind of reflect on, I used to be this type of photographer, I used to have this ability, and now I have this ability. So all these things combined really do make for a good opportunity. Man, this feels good, just to be able to talk photography outside of the editing space. So maybe I'll make more videos that are centered around the concept, like conceptual portions of photography. Like, when do you use a flash? When do you direct your kids to smile versus capturing candid photos? Because there are some photos where I have said, hey kids, I want you to smile. And then they smile and the photo comes out great. And then there's other photos where I say, hey kids, I want you to smile. And then they do something crazy, right? So moral of the story, maybe there's some latitude that we can discuss more than just photo editing on the channel. Obviously centered around getting them into ON1. I'm not going to back away from that because I really enjoy editing photos. But I don't talk enough about what happens before I get the photo into the computer. So if that's something you're interested in, and you have watched the replay, or you're on the stream right now, and you believe that would be something value added, then drop it in the comment section. Let me know, because I really think that there's some value in just discussing how to get certain things done inside of the camera, So when you get it into the editing space, it's a little bit better. Also, I would love for you to join me over on freewillphotos.com. I'm a one-man show. That website I am working on, slowly getting there. However, by joining the website, you get access to free downloads of ON1. I have a few work kits in there. One is for a Lightroom workflow. So if you're coming from Lightroom, then absolutely you want to download that. It just gives you the same concept of a workflow in ON1 that you would have in Lightroom. Obviously with the ON1 flexibility of mass and functionality of using blending options and things like that, but just the flow, so that way the transition's a little bit easier, right? I remember my transition from Lightroom, and I would have loved to have something like this to at least give me a starting point and then move forward. And then the other one is my black and white kit. It does not actually, it's not updated with the new curves method that I showed earlier this week. But I don't think I'm going to update that kit with it, because the method that I showed earlier this week in how you can use curves as a levels adjustment to really bring that tonal contrast and spread it over your histogram, and then make your contrast adjustments with another curves adjustment layer. That's for very specific photos, right? But the black and white kit is developed to be generic for every photo that you want to make black and white, and then gives you the tools that you need to actually edit the photo the way that you may want to. And then Antony says, go for it. He likes this. Thank you, Antony. I really do appreciate you, man. You are awesome. And then he's encouraging the GIFs on the website. Yeah, no, look, my goal, I am working on a course, a paid product, but that probably won't be ready until hopefully February of next year, but we'll see. Because I do want the course to be value added to everyone who decides to purchase it, but it's going to be centered around the concept of using photo editing in ON1 for beginners mainly, but hopefully there will be some nuggets in there for the intermediate. And then I have some other courses that I'm going to be making that are specific to intermediate individuals, but I want to get a beginner's course out because I know that there are a lot of people that are subscribers to this channel or regular viewers of the content on this channel that ON1 is a program that you just picked up, you're getting into photography, and you are trying to figure out what capabilities are available inside of the software. And I really want to cater to that audience, but at the same time, expand the audience to those who are more familiar with photo editing and want to go a step further, which is why, you know, my tutorials and my videos are kind of spread from like the very basics and simple things to the more complex and minute and specific things. So I think I said specific twice, but that is all good. Well, you know, for those of you who are looking for a copy of On1 Photo Raw, there is an affiliate link in the description box below. At no cost to you, you can download a version of, or at no extra cost. You do have to pay for the software, but at no extra cost to you when you purchase through those links, it does give this channel a small commission, so I can continue putting it towards, you know, maintaining the website, and also just keeping the resources available on this channel free, right? So you get the software, ON1 gives me a commission. It's a win-win in everyone's camp. Now, if you you know, want to stay in contact, you can obviously go over to my website and contact me. You can check the description box below. I have my email address. I do get back to the emails. This season of life has been a little bit busy, so I've been a little bit behind, but if you leave a comment down in the comment section, everyone who has been watching knows I do get back to all the comments. So I do respond. All right. Whatever message you want to share, keep it, keep it classy, right? And respectful. Yeah, I am having great holidays with my family. And Tony, I appreciate that. I hope you're doing the same. Now that you guys had that transition earlier in the year, hopefully you guys are doing the same. But yeah. And then last thing, if we're just now meeting and you watch this extremely long live stream or replay, I want to say thank you. You are awesome, and I really appreciate your support. But my name is Chris. I am the content creator and the photographer of this channel, Free Will Photos, and I help new photographers, intermediate photographers learn how to use ON1 Photo Raw and other photo editing applications so you can get your vision out into the world a little bit faster, reducing that learning curve. And I do all of that right here on YouTube and on my website through video content and sometimes in written content. Now, if that super overly long elevator pitch was entertaining to you and enticing, and you have not already, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you get notified when I launch new videos like this. Also, so you can see the polls and the questions that I post out there. All right. You got to make sure you hit that bell icon. And then for all of my friends that continue to support and all the new people that have come to hang out and support, I want to say Merry Christmas for the year of 2021 and Happy New Year's, because I probably won't have another live stream until January. Still got some videos planned for the month of December, but live streams, this will be the last one. So I want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting the live streams for the year 2021. And I look to see you guys in 2022. And of course, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.